Thank you, sir, for setting the context so well. And it also makes our task easy to take our discussion because it's so well situated, each of our presentations well situated within the context set by sir. So I would talk today, I would like to share experience on the TDR-led creative redevelopment practice in Ahmedabad. And what are the key learnings from it? The 4-5 aspects that I'll talk about is one, of course, what is already well known, imperatives for creative redevelopment in cities. Second, what are the repertoire of redevelopment instruments at different scales that are adopted in the state, and housing policy particularly as two of these instruments. And then I will share the experience of redevelopment under two specific housing policies for housing of the urban poor in slum and non-slum area, and also the TDR experience under that. The imperatives of redevelopment are already known to us as states, including the state of Gujarat, aspires to achieve its vision of $1 trillion economy. It also needs to take along about 15% of the population that lives in slum and non-slum areas but are urban poor, and occupying about 6 to 7% of the land in the cities. This can be achieved through redevelopment, and is actually being done through redevelopment of the housing that they are living in, and typically they also occupy about 0.9 to 1 FAR but are in the core area of the cities. So also the idea is also to unlock the potential of the land, at the same time deliver quality housing to the urban poor. As I mentioned, the state is quite creative in the repertoire or the different types of instruments that are being utilized for redevelopment at different scales. So at a local area plan, at a local area level, there is an instrument called local area plan, which is actually a planning instrument. Then there are also redevelopment of different precincts which are being done through public-private partnerships, and then there is very specific housing colony scale redevelopment which is done through different types of housing policies introduced by the State Department, Housing Department. Now here I would like to specifically talk about two. One, the in situ redevelopment of slums on public land, and this is where TDR is introduced as an enabling mechanism, and second is an in situ redevelopment of public housing. So these are the two policies under which this is being done. And what you also see is they are amended from time to time, and this is also something I'll talk about, that how this agility of amendment also is one of the factors in sort of delivering the housing for the poor at scale. If we see through a range of housing policies which have been introduced from 2010 to 23, in that time almost 10% of the investment in housing sector and 15% of the housing need and demand is being actually catered to redevelopment. So you can gauge the scale of the redevelopment in the state. Also, what is interesting is it is not being implemented only in the 4 big cities where there is an increasing land market. Because of the delivery of infrastructure in tier 1 cities other than the 4 ones, it is also now scaling to about 6-7 other cities as well in the state. So this is where you will see the kind of redevelopment initiatives. All of these are through the repertoire of instruments of redevelopment in the city. They are being implemented, but specifically under the two policies, about 30,000 houses have been redeveloped from 2010 to 24, and the pace is continuing even now with about 50,000 houses in total being redeveloped, and about 45,000 of slums and about 5,000 of the public housing redevelopment. So now I will talk about the specific experiences under these two policies and how we are able to deliver kind of decent housing in the state and especially in the city. One part of the narrative will be on the redevelopment experience, and the second will be on the TDR experience linked to it. So the 3 questions that are being asked as a sort of key learnings and takeaways are: how is private sector participation leveraged? How is livability improved? and how can we scale up the redevelopment to other cities for better livability and economic gains. So the first part on how is private sector participation leveraged, how is this being delivered through developers essentially. If we see about 68 sites in different parts of the city, slum settlements in different parts of the city are being redeveloped. Earlier it was done under 2010 policy, and now it is being done under 2013 policy. And through this, TDR of almost 2,000 crores has been generated. 50,000 houses are in different stages of being redeveloped. And about 95% of the TDR which has been issued to the developers is already been sold also. So that also reflects on the vibrancy of the land market and the need for additional floor space. Now I'll quickly talk about what are the sort of key takeaways from the policies and the SOP. So one, the policy in the SOP ensure accountability first and foremost to the beneficiary. How is this being done? This is done through clear, well-defined eligibility criteria for selection. That is, they have to be residents since 2010 and before, and also well-defined sort of documents to establish the eligibility. NGO, Mahila Housing Trust, has played a big role in also being an intermediary for community development, one of the risks to the redevelopment projects. The third is new houses are allotted to the beneficiary upon construction on the lottery basis, and fourth is that they are given houses on ownership basis and in women's name. This is also because of Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, as it was a mandate under that, and ISSR vertical was actually implemented. This was actually the ISSR vertical of PMAY. The policy also ensures accountability to and from the developer. So the developers are selected through competitive bidding, and they will receive against the cost that they incur, which is a cost of redevelopment of the housing, or rehabilitation housing, interim housing, operation and maintenance corpus, and 7 years of defect liability period. Against this cost which is incurred, the developers will get land plus TDR. If the value of the land which they get, free sale land, is more than the if this value is more than the value of the rehabilitation, it's a case of positive premium in which the developer has to pay some part of the premium on the free sale land to the authority, because the land belongs to the authority. This is called a case of positive premium. If the value of rehabilitation is less than, is more than the value of the free sale land, then the developer will actually ask for viability gap funding in the form of TDR. So this is a case of negative premium, and whoever developer is asking for minimum TDR will be awarded the work. So the bidding condition is highest bidder in case of positive premium, and the lowest bidder in case of negative premium will be awarded the work. And almost through the 68 slum sites, almost 2,000 crores of TDR has been issued to the developers. So most of the projects are case of negative premium. The certificates are issued in both the TDR certificate and folio are issued like this in a analog format. And this is where we can also have some takeaways from Mumbai and Hyderabad, which have shifted to a portal and digital formats of the TDRs, certificate and folio. If we look at the SOPs, the SOP is the Standard Operating Procedure of Ahmedabad Municipal Corporation. They have actually incrementally improved the RFP, technical and financial documents, bidding process and TDR mechanism. And as a result now, there is a timely completion and handover of the redeveloped unit to the beneficiary, which has been a big issue in the past, as Sir had also mentioned in his talk. And that has been a risk to the project, and this has also helped. Timely completion has helped in building communities' trust in the process. The next part that I will talk about is how is livability in such housing sites improved. There are pictures to actually show what kind of amenities have been created. Again, from the first project implemented in 2010 till now, we have come a long way. The technical biddings, in the RFP, the technical specifications have also improved, and they ensure better amenities, building standards and livability after the redevelopment is done. In fact, some of the houses which are rehabilitation houses are in fact better than what a developer would actually provide, in a free market of a similar specification. So those kind of standards are now being achieved. But there are some exceptions where the structures are more than P+7 structures. There are issues around maintenance and also issues around lot of amenities not working. So that is a sort of a concern. Also now, as part of the DCR, STPs are mandated as part of the most of the housing and including the redevelopment housing. And this is where the problem is that they just don't work on any of the sites, including redevelopment sites. So the recommendation also is that the redevelopment projects of urban poor should be actually exempted from the STPs. O&M corpus is right now inadequate, and our study shows that it should be at least 10 times the value which is prescribed in the policy. And if that is increased, we will have very well maintained sites over a long period of time, and lifetime benefits will be accrued to the beneficiaries. So these are some recommendations there. Now I will quickly similarly talk about the experience of the public housing policy. Similar thinking, about 16 public housing developed by AMC, OUDA and Housing Board have been redeveloped by private sector along the same lines with the same SOPs. And this has led to redevelopment of almost 6,500 houses and a TDR generation of 440 crores. Almost 85% of that TDR also has been absorbed in the market. Here, the developer policy and SOP ensure accountability to the beneficiary. They deliver, so the developer delivers larger housing unit with better amenities and infrastructure to the eligible beneficiary. The unit which is promised is 40% larger than the allotted unit to the public housing beneficiary, whenever it was allotted maybe 20, 30 years back. Here again, NGOs, Mahila Housing Trust, and they work as an intermediary for community development. New housing allotment is done through draw, and ownership rights are given to the beneficiaries. Same case, negative and positive premium. Largely, most of the sites are a case of negative premium, and about 440 crores of negative premium or TDR has been generated here. Again, TDR, the certificate, even in this policy, the certificate and folio are manual and analog in nature, whereas other states have moved to digital. So maybe this is something I'll reflect when I talk about the TDR portal experiences. Incrementally improved SOPs. Now, one very interesting thing here is that both for the slum redevelopment and the public housing redevelopment, the cell is common, which is the housing department or the housing cell within the municipal corporation. And over the past 15 years of practice, they have actually, and 15 years of execution, an ecosystem of trust and cooperation has actually developed between the key stakeholders, that is the municipal corporation, the NGO, the developers and the community. And through this, an agility is actually there within the decision makers, and there are incremental reforms in SOPs and policy from time to time. So this is one of the key structural factors which is responsible for a better delivery and success of the redevelopment here in the city. The livability, again, improving technical specifications in the RFP. They ensure better amenities, very similar to slum redevelopment. Building standards are better, and livability after redevelopment is also better. Again, here they are, the mandate of STP is not working. And so again, the recommendation is that such projects should be exempted from STP provision. There is an ambiguity here in public housing redevelopment. O&M corpus or charges are to be borne by the beneficiaries and not the developer. But there is an ambiguity in the policy, and as a result, practice varies from project to project. And this causes confusion on the ground level. So if this ambiguity is addressed, then it would be clear that all, what would be the conditions. I think that need to be sort of clarified. So now, key takeaways from the experience of redevelopment are 5 major takeaways. 1, an agile state and local government which is amenable to amend the policy from time to time in response to experiences of issues on ground. Hence, you saw in the beginning amendment of 16, 18 and 19 years. So that policy cannot be static. SOPs cannot be static. They need to be amended from time to time. Second, incrementally developed ecosystem of cooperation and trust between stakeholders. And third, also in aligned with that, the incrementally developed SOPs, which are technical and financial bid documents, bidding process, TDR mechanism. The role of NGO is absolutely sort of a key factor, in fact, of making some of this viable and building this ecosystem as well. The fourth aspect is accountability and viability of TDR mechanism by GDCR and increasing land markets. And the fifth is for long-term benefits. This is something that our policy and SOPs need to really focus on. For long-term benefits, maintenance criteria need to be clearly defined in the policy and the SOP. This is the experience of the redevelopment. Now I'll just quickly go through the TDR experience, how it has been an enabling tool for a redevelopment. So the questions which I'm trying to answer is it an enabling tool? Does it compete with public revenue source? Does it ensure accountability from the developer of the slum and the public housing? Does it get utilized in transit-oriented zone, as Sir was also mentioning? Does TDR cause negative externality around the recipient plot? And is there information asymmetry on TDR generation and cartelization, which has been experienced in maybe some of the cities in terms of the holding, monopolistic holding of the TDR? As I mentioned, in the city, both public housing and slum redevelopment has been achieved through TDR. 50,000 houses between the two have been redeveloped, and around 2,000 crores of TDR has been generated to the developers who have been involved in doing this redevelopment. This is, there are also TDR which are generated through other sort of policies as well, including heritage TDRs, riverfront TDR, road TDR, but the bulk of the TDR is actually generated through the public housing and slum redevelopment. TDR is viable. What is interesting is the bulk of the TDR which has been issued, about 3.5 million square meter of TDR. It is viable as 90% of the generated TDR has already been sold in the land market to different developers, and it has been utilized. So that is, the viability is currently there because the land market and the land values have reached so that it can be absorbed. The second part is SOPs ensure that TDR does not compete with the public revenue source because it can be purchased on the recipient plot only after the chargeable FSI is fully purchased. So after the purchase of that only the TDR can be, so that there is no loss of revenue for the government's public source as well. Third, the SOPs ensure accountability from the slum redeveloper by ensuring that the TDR can be utilized in the recipient plot only after building permission and the building use certificate of the slum rehabilitation component is actually issued to the slum developer. So that the developers, often in some cities the experience has been, they take the TDR and then do not deliver the slum redevelopment. So this is to ensure an accountability from the slum redeveloper. We have done studies of about 85 recipient sites and about 6 origin sites to see where the TDR is being actually utilized currently in the city. And what we can see, there was a thinking it is utilized only in the markets where the land prices are high, but that is not the case. It is actually utilized both in the western and the eastern Ahmedabad, but the enabling condition for the utilization of TDR is graded residential zones with differential FSI. So the zones which have lower FSI, R2 and R3, are the recipient zones for the TDR, because as I mentioned earlier, TDR can be purchased on the recipient plot only after the maximum FSI is consumed, including the base and the purchasable FSI. One concern is that TDR does not, so again sir had mentioned whether it goes into the transit oriented zone or not. It does not currently go into the transit oriented zone, whether because there the permissible FSI is already 4. It is already high, so then it does not leave much room for higher heights to be achieved through the TDR, and hence that is one concern. It can be addressed by looking at what could be the transit oriented zone DCR, within the DCR. Is there a negative externality on the plots around a recipient plot? Yes, if the recipient plot falls on road widths below 18 meters, these are some instances where we found that at least light and air circulation is sort of impeded to the surrounding plots when the height exceeds on the recipient plot, especially when the road width is below 18 meters. So that's where we find that there is some negative externality. Information on TDR holders. Is there an information asymmetry? We do not see that in Ahmedabad. There is, whatever information I show here, it is all from the website of the municipal corporation. It is released, but it is not released in real time. So there may be some time lapse which is there. Whether there is cartelization, again as you see, there are many developers who are holding both slum TDR as well as public housing TDR. We don't see cartelization because the actual TDR is granted through competitive bidding, as I mentioned in the beginning, and so there is no monopolistic holding. Whoever is awarded the project will be holding the TDR, and this information is released on the municipal corporation's website from time to time. So this is also something which has been addressed well, but some learnings from Hyderabad, Maharashtra, Telangana and Andhra in this aspect are quite interesting. When with high TDR volumes, these states have now transitioned to TDR portal and digital TDR certificates. This facilitates higher information transparency. So we know Maharashtra was the first to start the TDR. They started in '93, and by now our study shows this could be debatable. About 15 million square meter of TDR has been already issued over the past 20 years. And out of that, 74% has already been utilized. In case of Telangana, which is mainly in Hyderabad, 2006 they started the TDR, issue of TDR, 3.6 million has been issued, and of that about 78% has been utilized, and in case of Ahmedabad, about 3.5 million square meter has been issued and about 92% has been utilized. This is by 2010 when we started. So there is clearly in the cities, there is a buoyancy in the land market, for which SR mentioned that it will not work in all the cities, but cities where there is increased land market, this mechanism may work. So when these other two cities, what they have done, or the states, they have transitioned with higher volume of TDR, they have transitioned to administering this through a TDR portal and also shifting from analog to a digital TDR certificate for better transparency and real-time release of information. And the information that are released are on TDR Bank, TDR Ledger, and online also facilitation of online TDR transaction between the TDR buyer and the TDR holder. This ensures information symmetry and transparency, prevents market monopoly. It also gives information on the receiving zones and also negative externalities, if any, which have been created. It creates a digital marketplace for both the buyer and the seller and reduces the black component in the TDR. So these are the key learnings from the 3 cities and the states, and what is the kind of transparency within their portals in terms of the bank, the ledger, online transactions, and to what extent are these visible to a user, whether it is a citizen or it is a user who is a registered user, the degree of visibility of all of this information on their portal. If we do this, probably we can in fact make the TDR mechanism in the state even more robust. So this is where I would conclude. The key takeaways of the TDR experience are, yes, it does not compete with the public revenue source. The TDR SOP ensure accountability from the developer. They do not get utilized in the transit-oriented zone, which is which means that the DCR should be recalibrated accordingly. It does cause minor negative externality around the recipient plots when they fall under road widths which are below 18 meters. There is no information asymmetry on TDR generation and cartelization, but there is time lapse in the release of information. It is not in real time. And the shift to TDR portal with public access to TDR bank and ledger will enhance this transparency. Thank you very much for your patient hearing. Looking forward to feedback.